Good evening, everyone. Coming to you live from Tacoma Park, Maryland. It is the DMV NFL Show. I'm Richard Brown, coming to you live, and now I'd like to introduce to you Dan Franko as a guest analyst. He is an actor in the DMV area and is a diehard Washington Redskins fan. Dan, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. What I want to start off by asking is, do you think Kirk Cousins should get extended? And if so, for how much money? What kind of a contract do you think?
Absolutely. I think he came through. He showed that this is his team, especially as of late from about the Tampa Bay game on. They've really started to open things up for him, put him in positions to succeed, and I think it will get done. They're not going to let him go anywhere. Last year, Foles got about $12 million a year after he signed with got traded to the Rams. Granted, it didn't go well for him this year out there. He got benched and all of that. But I think that's around the ballpark of where I think 12 to 15. But unfortunately, they waited. They waited too long. He has a chance now to win a playoff game or two. And I think each one of those that happens is going to cost them a little bit more. So he could end up somewhere in that 15 to 16 range, 3 years, 15, 16 mil.
Yeah, and I think probably what Scott McCloughan and Daniel Snyder want to do is probably do something along the lines of maybe like a Colin Kaepernick deal. Not for the amount of money that Kaepernick got, $18 million a year, but they made it very cap friendly so that if he struggled, they could get out of it. So we'll see what happens. But you're right. If he wins playoff games, the salary is going to go up and up and up and up,
and that's good for all of us.
Yeah.
So I think my concern, my fear with that is that, I know we're going to get to some head coaching vacancies here shortly, but Kyle Shanahan and he are pretty tight, and I'm worried that wherever Shanahan lands, he's going to really try to lure Cousins there.
Yeah, and Mike Shanahan also interviewed with the Miami Dolphins,
right.
So they have a settled quarterback situation there, but you never know. Stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
Now, getting on to what's your biggest surprise this season? Like, what really has shocked you?
I'm going to stay local. The Redskins. I figured them third in the division, competing somewhere, in the 6-7 win, maybe 5-6 win, improving on last year, but not winning the division, not 9 wins, not more than doubling your win total from last year. So that was my big surprise. I think you really have to look at what McCloughan has done in addition to
one draft.
Smith on the defensive side is already in the last 6 weeks is already more of a compliment to Kerrigan than Arakpo was.
Yeah, Arakpo's doing nothing in Tennessee.
Yeah, and Sheriff. I know that they drafted him as a tackle, but he's great at guard.
He is a stud.
Yeah. So between that and it kind of buffering the team from above, keeping the owner in the owner's box.
Oh, absolutely, exactly.
And keeping the personnel decisions in his office. That's been huge. And Bill Callahan coming in and taking control of the line, and what he's done with the line there is they're keeping Cousins upright, and this week in particular, coming up in the playoff game, the ability to run the ball and keep and for the line to keep Clay Matthews off of Cousins is going to be huge, and I think that's Bill Callahan's had a huge impact on the team.
Oh yeah, and but for me, my biggest surprise has been the New York Jets. I thought that they would be 6-7 wins, new head coach coming in, but I got to give it up to Todd Bowles. He's the antithesis of Rex Ryan. Going from 4-12 last year to 10-6 this year.
They needed 11.
I know, but they lost some critical games, but they're a young team. I think that they're definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with in the next couple of years,
especially as the Patriots kind of age out.
Absolutely. Now what's your biggest disappointment?
Again, staying local. Going into the season, the Ravens were a popular Super Bowl pick to go deep into the playoffs and make a Super Bowl run. And what happened to them has just been insane. Just I looked it up, kind of keeping an eye on it as the season went along, but really looked it up. They've got an all-star team on the IR almost. I mean, you've got Flacco there, you've got Justin Forsett, Talaferro, so both of your starting running backs, Steve Smith, Brashad Perryman, who, granted, he was a rookie, but they were confident enough in him to let Torrey Smith go. So this was a big Pitta, Suggs, Tommy Jernigan, and Canty off the D-line, Will Davis, Ladarius Webb at the cornerback, and Matt Elam, your starting safety. So they were obliterated on the injury front up there in Baltimore. So, and I think what's going to be interesting is next year as those guys come back healthy. There's talk that Suggs may retire. That might be why he didn't talk to people on the way out of the building on Pack Your Bags Day. But getting all those guys back and having a number 6 pick, which they haven't had since they drafted Suggs back in the early 2000s, that's going to be big. They could quickly turn things back around.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they'll bounce back. The Ravens have been a disappointment, but I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills.
Okay.
They were a consensus pick to get a wild card, with Rex Ryan coming in. He's a defensive guru. They have a loaded roster on defense. Marcel Darius, Jerry Hughes, Mario Williams, who's probably not going to be there next year. They had Stephon Gilmore in the secondary, and all those other safeties they have. I mean, they're just and then the offensive side of the ball, you have Sammy Watkins and Robert Woods, and they paid money for Charles Clay and Tyrod Taylor coming in. Good offensive line, LaShawn
McCoy.
Yeah, and
Thank you, Chip Kelly.
I mean, I just thought that I just expected better out of them, and they just didn't get it done. So
it's hard. Nobody expected Tyrod Taylor. I didn't expect Tyrod Taylor, and I've kept track of the Ravens locally. They're my number 2 team. I didn't expect Tyrod Taylor to go up there and be an impact starting quarterback. I thought he was going to have a lot of growing pains, and I mean he was very good this year. Obviously not great, but very good, and a lot better than I think that any of us expected. Especially and now pushing EJ Manuel out and
EJ Manuel. I mean, EJ Manuel showed me flashes his rookie year, but then there was a game against the Cleveland Browns where he kind of pulled an RG3 where he didn't get out of bounds and didn't slide and he got his knee hit, and he just wasn't the same guy. And I'm just wondering if that pressure kind of got to him. But I think Buffalo will bounce back. I think that Mario Williams was Rex Ryan's biggest critic, so I think with him being out, I mean, there was a report out that from an anonymous Bills player that Mario Williams is all about him rather than the team. So that'll be interesting to see what happens. But the other hot topic that happened yesterday, which took me completely by surprise, was Lovie Smith being fired in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that was a surprise. 2 years for a coach of his caliber, there's got to be more going on there. I saw a quote from Jason Licht. He said, when you have eight wins in 2 years and 3 home wins in 2 years, they've been patient enough. But their team was garbage. I mean, there's a reason you had the number 1 pick overall, and that wasn't Lovie Smith. It was your organization, the fallout from the Schiano debacle.
Oh God, that was terrible.
So there were mistakes that were made prior to Lovie setting foot in that building, and he didn't get a fair shake to kind of come in and fix and right the ship. That being said, they clearly have their eye on someone else. They've seen what they feel is enough from him, and they've gone in another direction.
It's interesting, that they have somebody in their eye. There's talks about Dirk Cotter, the offensive coordinator, and Jameis Winston had a phenomenal year. Over 4,000 yards passing, 22 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, completing 58% of his passes. That's below league average, but for a rookie, that's pretty good. And Dirk Cotter has had a great history with quarterbacks. You look at with Jacksonville Jaguars with David Garrard. He got some good, solid games out of Byron Leftwich. Going to Atlanta, that offense took off, and then coming to Tampa, and they finished 6th in scoring, right behind New England. So I mean that's a big improvement. But I really the thing to me about Dirk Cotter is he coached at college, Boise State and Arizona State had some winning records. He had a 9-3 record, a 10-2 record. He's pretty good, but my issue with him is his offenses start out hot when first couple of years, and then they just go right in the toilet. 2007 Jaguars did a good job offense, but in 2008 they went downhill. 2009 they were okay. 2010 they were all right. When Blaine Gabbert got there, it just went in the toilet. Goes to Atlanta. First year they were fantastic, but 2013, 2014 they didn't do so hot. So, it's just the level of consistency. And I just think, Lovey's track record speaks for itself. He was 89 and 87 as a head coach, 3-3 playoff record. Took the nothing Bears and turned them around.
I didn't think that he deserved to be fired from the Bears.
10-6 season.
10-6 in the playoffs. Right?
No, they barely missed it.
Oh, they did. Okay, I thought they were a playoff team that year, but still 10-6, and that's I was shocked when they fired him, and then went with a guy from Canada. So
Mark Trestman.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. The last coach that I'm aware of that started off 2-14 his first year and 6-10 his second year was Bill Walsh. 1979, 2-14, 1980, 6-10. The next year they go 13-3, win the Super Bowl. Now I'm not sure that would have happened in Tampa, but I think they could have finished maybe 9-7 or 10-6 the next year.
I think it's hard. It's hard to judge a coaching staff on 2 years, especially when the first year is coming out of out of what they came out of with Schiano, and before that,
Raheem Morris.
Who I think was a good coach, and I'm glad that we had him here in Washington for a while. I thought he's a good defensive
secondary
coach. Yeah, but they were in bad shape, and he needed more time.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in Tampa Bay. But I think Lovey is probably going to find a job soon. I think I could see Philly or the Giants.
If not a head coaching, then instantly a defensive coordinator for a year, and then.
Yeah, because look what he did in 2001 with the St. Louis Rams. With the Rams, the year before he got there, were like 28th in total defense. Granted, they cut about 10 starters on defense and brought in new people, like Aeneas Williams and all that. But, they went all the way up to number 4. And they were always respectable there in St. Louis on defense. Everybody talks about the greatest show on turf. They had a pretty good defense, from between 01 and 03. So, Lovey is not going to have to worry about employment much longer. So,
no. If I were him, I'd take the year and just cash those Glazer checks and.
Oh yeah, he's laughing all the way to the bank.
Go speak on TV for a little while, like Bill Cowher, and then come back to it, and when the right situation for me opens up.
All right, and speaking of head coaching vacancies, there's a lot of them out there. Cleveland is open, and San Francisco, Miami, Philly, the Giants, and now Tampa. Detroit and Tennessee are still not sure right now. We'll see what unfolds there. The Lions are still looking for new general manager. I think they will keep Jim Caldwell. I think that they started off a little shaky but then they finished off strong. And and he's a good coach. He took the Colts to a Super Bowl. So
I'd be surprised. I think the Tennessee job is basically a vacancy at this point as well. Heard earlier today talk about Chip Kelly there. Obviously, the Mariota connection, but I don't know. I'd have a hard time jumping back on the Chip bandwagon right now.
The thing is, if Chip Kelly gets another job, he's not going to be in control. I think that the writing's on the wall for that. Yeah. He can coach, but my thing with Chip Kelly is he needs to change his offense. Like this fast stuff is just going to it wears the team out.
Wears the team out, but it he got rid of the guys who were great in that offense.
Oh, yeah.
LaShawn McCoy is built for that. Deshaun Jackson tore it up the first year in that situation. So what are you doing?
Yeah, and then Jeremy Maclin. Look what he's doing in Kansas City right now. But there's Cleveland. My thing with the Cleveland Browns is, I think the defense is pretty good. I think, getting Joe Hayden back from injury is going to bolster the secondary. They have good players like Deshaun Gibson, and Nate Orchard, Danny Shelton, Craig Robertson, Dante Whitner, Paul Kruger. But they have absolutely no offense.
It would be interesting to see if Josh Gordon is ever allowed back. And
right.
And but if if he is, he's fast. He's a great receiver. He's got a year and a half of no tread on the tires, so he comes back fresh. If he can keep his nose clean, then he could instantly make that offense better and that special teams better. That's a tough job to jump into it. You're not going to get an established coach. You're going to get somebody who
you're going to get a young gun.
Yeah,
and they're going to need a new general manager. And Jimmy Haslam is not the easiest owner to work with. I mean, he's constantly putting his fingers, in all the pies.
And look, I loved Moneyball. We love the movie. Jonah Hill was great in it. He got an Oscar nom. They hired that guy. Basically, that's the guy they hired, Paul DePodesta, as the football guy, as the strategy VP of operations, or above the VP of football operations. So that's the guy. You have a guy from the Mets. Paul DePodesta is running the show now in Cleveland.
I mean, it's more like a circus there than a football team, And
if it works, hey, great. You're thinking out of the box, and you're hiring a guy. Good business people can succeed in different businesses, but baseball and football are very different entities, and the structure and the scouting and all of that, it's a very different thing.
Jimmy Haslam did this a couple of years. Remember when they brought in Mike Holmgren, back in 2011. That didn't really work out. And then, they brought in Joe Banner, and he had his notoriety with the Philadelphia Eagles, and Mike Lombardi, and that didn't really work out. So he took a chance on Ray Farmer, who was an up-and-coming GM, and that didn't work out. I mean, Jimmy Haslam's a gambling man, so, we'll see what happens with this new guy. But, I mean, I think that's probably the least desirable job right now.
And then the whole, just the Manziel debacle.
Oh, he's gone.
This whole thing has been, I mean, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. But, it's just been a mess. And that franchise is going to be another 2, 3, 4 years just recovering from the recent mistakes.
Absolutely, yeah. The bad drafting, and the Barcavis Mingo, and then they drafted Brandon Whedon and Trent Richardson a couple of years ago. I mean, it's but the next vacancy, San Francisco 49ers. Arik Armstead, I really thought that was a bit of a high pick, but he actually played pretty well in that defense. I know they were ranked 28th, but they were on the field a lot. I think the offensive side of the ball, they got Anquan Bolden, they got Torrey Smith. I like Vance McDonald. I think he's really developing into a really good tight end. If Colin Kaepernick's gone, they're going to have a boatload of cap room because if he gets cut or traded, $18 million is going to be wiped off the books.
Yeah.
And then, but the cons of it is, the offensive line needs help, defensive line, linebacker, corner. They need another tight end, and I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to work for Trent Baalke or the York family, because they tend to just, meddle in everything, like what they did with Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, I mean, when you can run a guy out of there, look what he brought your team back to relevance for the first time in quite a while.
He took over a 6-10 team, and he had him in the NFC title game first year.
And then he goes straight to Michigan and has them fixed. He's a great coach, and how you sync that, or how you don't let that work, or it's just beyond me.
And he was a tough-minded coach. I mean, everybody thought Mike Singletary was too tough, but I wouldn't want to make Harbaugh mad. I mean, you'll probably throw a locker at you. So, and I really didn't like how they treated Jim Tom Sula. They never should have hired Jim Tom Sula in the first place, but they only gave him 1 year, and supposedly he's a really good motivator, but he's not a very good X's and O's guy, so maybe they saw that. But, again, not a job that I probably won't get an established head coach. But, I mean, you look at Chip Kelly's interested in the vacancy, and Mike Shanahan.
Shanahan out there, or Kyle Shanahan, or a traditional offensive kind of coach. You've got... looking at that kid from California, Jared Goff, he's right in their backyard. He's a Cal, and he'd be the kind of a perfect fit right there in sticking around in the Bay Area. Yeah,
and Blaine Gabbert played. I thought Blaine Gabbert played really, really well last year. He was a first-round pick of the Jaguars, didn't do so hot, but back around 2011, 2013, they were really, really bad. And I think having Jeep Christ as his quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator really helped. Completed 60% of his passes, 2,000 yards, threw more touchdowns than interceptions. He made Colin Kaepernick look absolutely silly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing what's happened. You had the three guys that came on the scene: RG3, Kaepernick, and Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson is really kind of the only one of the three that has shown to be
absolutely
has any staying power and to be a legit starting quarterback so far.
Another big job out there is the Miami Dolphins, and that team is. I was shocked they had a losing record this year. Especially that they did beat the Redskins opening day, but they have a loaded roster with talent. On the offensive side of the ball, Tannehill. They're still waiting for him to take that next step, but I think he's pretty good. He threw for 4,000 yards again this year, 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, completed more than 60% of his passes. They have young receivers in Devontae Parker, Jarvis Landry. They have Greg Jennings. They have Kenny Stills. Defensive side of the ball, they have Brent Grimes. They have Kolomisi and Olivier Vernon, Ndamukong Suh, Cameron Wake. They have talent on that team. So, but they have cap issues. They tied up, $114 million in Ndamukong Suh. Ryan Tannehill has a $99 million contract, and those are tough contracts to get out from under.
They were 25th in total defense. So when you're paying that much for Ndamukong Suh, you need to make sure you have more around, just more productivity. You can't be 25th when you're putting that kind of money into the defense.
And if he has another bad year, people are going to start forgetting about Albert Hainsworth, and because you look at.
But he won't shut up and let them forget about him.
Oh yeah, but like Suh's contract, 6 years, $114 million.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that was an obscene contract. When they could have gotten somebody cheap like Nick Fairley, who the Rams got for $5 million for 1 year, who's a stud, or they could have drafted somebody. I mean, honestly, they should have invested that money in their offensive line because they gave up a whopping 50 sacks again this year.
Yeah.
But, and they're undergoing a makeover right there. They just fired Dennis Hickey, their general manager, Mike Tannenbaum. I mean, Mike Tannenbaum is a decent evaluator of talent, but he invests big money in these contracts. I mean, you don't want a general manager that's cheap, but you also want one that's not going to, put unnecessary money in unnecessary areas like he did with Suh.
Yeah, it's as we're getting into these other teams that have vacancies, that the Dolphins kind of are a good contrast because since Shula left, they've had no stability between GM and coach over. I mean, they had Wannstedt for way too long.
Yeah.
But they're kind of constantly changing the front office and the head coach.
Kind of like what Daniel Snyder did, with the Redskins
exactly.
for a while.
Whereas you get to the Eagles and the Giants, and these are teams that stay the course. They back their coach. They give them time to fix things. That's why I think the more, especially the Giants, is probably the most, for me, if I were a top coaching prospect, that's the place where I would want to go.
Oh yeah, and Giants and Philly, they both have excellent front offices.
Yeah.
There are some gaping holes on both those teams. Like the Giants, they need a defense real badly, but they have an offense that can score points just like that.
Their D was abysmal. They were dead last, 420
historically bad defense,
420 yards offense per game, averaging. They gave up 298 passing per game, and they were 30th in sacks. So, I mean, they were near dead last in everything.
I just think, Jason Pierre-Paul not being the same.
Yeah.
They have no pass rush,
Well, he can't grab the quarterback the way he used to. He can't get to the guy.
And I was never high on Jason Pierre-Paul. He was kind of a project player. He had that outstanding 2011 year where he had 16 sacks. Last year he had 12. But, he took a little bit to catch fire, But, the secondary I still think is solid with Cromartie and they have, Prince Amukamara and Landon Collins I think is going to be an absolute stud. And going to Philadelphia, they need offensive line help. You don't know if they're going to bring Bradford back. I could see maybe RG3 going there. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not off the top of my head. I don't know what Bradford's contract situation was, but
he was making $13 million this year.
But they emptied the closet to get him. So,
whoever has that team's not going to have a lot of draft picks to work with. But, I think that the most desirable job, I mean, like you said, the Giants, the Eagles, you could say Tampa Bay because of the amount of talent they have. I think they're a few players away, but again, working for the Glazers, that.
And you come into Tampa Bay, you're in a division with Carolina, who's damn good right now.
Yeah.
The Saints, who are perpetually
Drew
good.
Brees.
Yeah, they're down, but they kept Brees, they kept Peyton, so they're going to be contenders, or they're going to be at least. They're not going to suck.
Yeah,
they're going to be in the discussion. They're going to and Atlanta's good. So that's a tough division, and you come in on the perpetual last place team. That your best case scenario is hoping these guys all kind of taper off at the right time, and you can have 2 or 3 years before they rebuild and come back.
And Tampa did a pretty good job competing with New Orleans and Atlanta. It just Carolina, that's the big dog right there.
And I think of all these teams, the thing that stands out to me about the Eagles is that team just packed it in. I mean, they packed their bags 3 weeks ago. They knew Chip Kelly was leaving. They stopped playing for him. I mean, they sucked. They were really, really bad.
Yeah, and it's the report that came out, Howard Eskin from Philadelphia, who's well respected in the media right there, said Jason Peters took himself out of a game because he didn't want to risk getting injured for a team that wasn't going to the playoffs.
So that, and you have DeMarco Murray going straight to the owner. When you have a situation like that, it permeates that locker room long past when that coach is gone. So you're going to have guys that resent people for doing that.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's going to take a long time to get past that.
All right, well,
but I think the Giants. That's a situation. Dallas is going to suck. Philly's going to suck. Whoever comes into the Giants, you get a top third of the league quarterback. You have the best receiver in the game probably right now. I mean, you have an offense.
Decent offensive line that's young and coming together, and they're going to only get better with Will Beatty coming back from injury.
Yeah, you put some instant attention to the defense. You can come in. You can win the division next year and go to the playoffs. So, and I keep hearing Josh McDaniels for that one.
Ooh, I don't know about Josh McDaniels. He didn't do so hot in
he didn't,
Denver,
but I'm sure he would not bring Tim Tebow to New York with him.
All right, well, we're going to take a short break right now. When we get back, we're going to talk about the new Redskins Stadium. And is Calvin Johnson hanging it up for good? We'll be right back. All right, well, I'm back here with Dan Franko. Now we're going to talk about the big news in D.C., reported by the Washington Post, the new Redskins Stadium. And Daniel Snyder has moved forward with plans, and he's hired Danish architect Bjarke Ingels to design it. You might remember Bjarke Ingels. He's doing a master plan, 20 years down the mall, and he's also done some famous work at the National Building Museum. Remember the big maze back in 2014, and also the hot to cold exhibit with all those models around the building showing his work.
And I love the swan dress that he wears. Sometimes. Oh, that's Bjork. Sorry, that's someone else. My bad.
His designs are always detailed, and they always have sustainable living, like a lot of glass, with natural light coming through. And if you look at a lot of his designs, there's a lot of atriums, a lot of gathering spaces and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm excited to see what he's going to put together. And I'm glad that, they're moving forward with this because FedEx Field is, pretty much, falling down,
FedEx Field was, FedEx Field opened the year before M&T up in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And you couldn't get two different stadiums. At FedEx is that Jack Kent Cooke 70s cookie cutter, just round stadium. He built it the way the stadiums were built when he was coming up, and when he the stadiums that he thought it should have been, and it just never had. I know they've done a lot. I've only been there a few times. I know they've tried to do a lot to bring some personality to it, but it's just a big concrete monolith in the middle of a parking lot off the Beltway.
Yeah, and it's in Landover, Maryland.
Yeah.
It's kind of out there. There is Morgan Boulevard Metro nearby, but my thing about it is it's not really in an area where it's readily accessible.
Right.
And what kind of made me mad was when they got rid of the bus service from Landover that took you to the stadium because Daniel Snyder wanted everybody to park there and pay for the parking fee.
Oh, totally.
But they're looking at Loudoun County as a potential area. I'm not crazy about that.
You have the same problem there that you have in Landover.
Right,
exactly. Is that you have all these stadiums where they open up the views so that you can see the city where the team plays. The Minneapolis stadium is going to be amazing from what I understand. And the new Atlanta, where the designs of the new Atlanta stadium are beautiful. Out in Loudoun County, you just have more pictures of open land. Nothing really dramatic about that location.
And, and the other thing is, you look at what DC United is going to do. They're going to be going down to the waterfront when they move out of RFK. And one of the things that people are talking about the RFK site, and the problem with that is it's government-owned land, and there's just a lot of bids
it's the
and
name.
stuff.
It's the name. DC is not going to let them come back with the name.
Well, yeah, I mean that, and Muriel Bowser is not wild about the name either,
And ironically, it's the same thing that happened with the Redskins going into that stadium to begin with. The original RFK, or I guess Griffin? No,
it was Municipal Stadium.
They signed code that the Redskins couldn't play in that stadium unless they were integrated. And because they were the last team to integrate.
Absolutely.
So it would be the second time that the political atmosphere has caused a major change to the Redskins organization to get them into that stadium in that spot.
Yeah, and I mean RFK. I mean I love RFK. I mean it's a lot of great memories and stuff. DC United is moving out of there in 2018. The stadium I think is leased there through 2038, if memory serves me correctly. But we'll see what happens. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they decided to demolish it and put a new stadium there. I mean, I think another location they should look at is the DC waterfront. Where the big Ferris wheel is, right in Fort Washington.
Yeah,
because that's right between Alexandria and Maryland and DC. That would be that's actually not too far away from where National Stadium is.
Yep.
So,
and you stay in Maryland on that side, where National Harbor.
Yeah, National Harbor, yeah.
So you stay in Maryland on that side. You have that great view across the Wilson Bridge up into DC, and you're not going to come into that issue that with changing the name. That they want it to be, that Snyder wants to host a Super Bowl. So it's going to have to be a retractable roof stadium, most likely.
And they're all saying a dome. I hope it's not a dome.
I'm hoping retractable roof. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want it to be smaller. I want it. The great thing about RFK was when it was just a monstrous thing that shook. Bring that back. Give us something similar to what we used to have.
Yeah, because FedEx Field doesn't shake. I mean, some people have claimed that it has shaken, but I mean, I've been going to Redskins games there for 10 years, and I haven't seen it shake. So
Gus Frerotte made it shake.
I'm excited to see what Bjarke Ingels is going to put together and the plans, and I think it's going to be a hell of a stadium.
Yeah, definitely.
Next up, we're going to go into Calvin Johnson retiring. He's announced that he's mulling retirement. It's not set in stone yet, but he's starting to wear it down a little bit. He's still very, very good, but he's not as prolific as he was back in 2012 when he almost broke 2,000 receiving yards. He's had some problems with injuries. He's the fastest receiver to reach 10,000 yards in NFL history.
Yeah.
And you look at his final numbers, 731 receptions, 11,619 yards, 83 touchdowns. I mean, those are really, really good numbers. And, but the one problem is if he does come back, he carries a $24 million cap hit next year.
Right. And I'm wondering how much of this is about trying to end up somewhere else. Maybe he wants to get out of Detroit and just talking about maybe I won't be there. Maybe that's just kind of speeding up the process of them just kind of parting ways. I'm not sure what they're would they take the full hit next year?
Yes, they would.
No, so,
I mean, well, if they cut him, like let's say they cut him, they would save $11 million. They would still be on the books for $12 million of dead money, okay. But they could use that money to get Matthew Stafford an offensive tackle.
Right.
They struggle to protect the quarterback. But
so in that situation, I'm not sure how much of this is legitimately him thinking about retiring as opposed to just maybe trying to play somewhere else. And I think one thing that we're going to see a lot more as we go forward is players are becoming more aware and more conscious of the head injuries and the toll that the game plays on your body.
Yeah, and you look at what happened in San Francisco last year. They had Anthony Davis retired at age 25, Chris Bortland, their promising rookie. He retired after his rookie year because he said he already had 3 concussions. And then you look at Patrick Willis. He retired in the prime of his career.
Yep.
So I mean, the concussion issue is definitely interesting. I'm not sure Calvin Johnson has had any concussions, but the concussion protocols a couple of years ago were very lackadaisical. Yeah. So,
and he's a big guy, and he takes some punishment, and he keeps going. I mean, he's had some injury issues. Some he's been banged up, but they're all banged up at that level.
Absolutely.
But the question is, are he? And I saw Barry Sanders say he's without a doubt Hall of Fame numbers, and I don't think that I agree with that. Not right now. He needs a few more years at a decent level of production before he's there. His reception 731. That puts him 43rd. He has 30 more than Gary Clark, who's not in. And won't be in. He's got 11,619 yards. That's 27th. 28th is Mushin Muhammad. 29th is Rod Smith, and 30th is Keenan McCardle. They're not getting in.
Oh yeah.
So you're in a neighborhood where your neighbors aren't Hall of Famers.
So yeah. So it's definitely
a
gamble.
More, yeah.
We were talking about Sean Payton earlier. What do you think about him and Chuck Pagano staying with their teams? Everybody thought they were going to be fired for sure.
I think that they're connected more than we realize, because I think the Colts really wanted to make a play for him, and when he decided to stay in New Orleans, that they decided to stay the course with Pagano.
Yeah, if Pagano were to be let go, I think he would have found work quickly because he's an excellent coach.
I would like to see the Ravens bring him back.
Yeah.
So, I think all my friends in New Orleans, and I don't know, I'm not sure they're listening, but Dwayne and Jamon, they knew that he wasn't leaving. They said the whole time, just all on Facebook, he's not leaving, he's not going anywhere, they're not going anywhere. So they were pretty confident down in New Orleans that this wasn't the end of Sean Payton down there.
All right, so league MVP. I mean, there's 4 guys that are definitely up for it. Cam Newton, Carson Palmer, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson. I mean, I think Cam Newton gets it because
he's a lock. They were a monstrous team this year.
And he has no elite wide receivers, and he still throws for 38 touchdowns and only 10 interceptions.
Brady, I mean, I think when Gronk went down and they missed a period of that middle chunk of the season, and all the receivers started going, because he was throwing for 350 and 4 touchdowns a game through the first 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, he was killing it.
He was killing it. But it tapered, and it hasn't tapered with Cam Newton. Russell Wilson's stats are very similar to Cam Newton's, but Cam Newton's the number 1 seed riding a bye week, and Russell Wilson's on the road this week. So
yeah,
they didn't get the wins. They didn't win the division, and I think Cam definitely. I think he runs away with it.
And Carson Palmer, was like nipping at his heels for it. But I mean, the thing is, you look at Carson Palmer. He's got Larry Fitzgerald, John Brown, Michael Floyd. Excellent offensive line. That team's loaded, and there were a couple games where, this last game against Seattle, he didn't play particularly well against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and against the St. Louis Rams. All those games they should have won. But I think Cam Newton gets it for Offensive Player of the Year. I would have to say I like Antonio Brown in Pittsburgh because he's close to 2,000 receiving yards, and you look at the 2 games where Roethlisberger was hurt when they went with Michael Vick, he only had 100 receiving yards in 2 games.
Didn't Brown miss early on?
He did, yeah. And I mean, it's just amazing what he's been able to do. I like AJ Green. His stats have tapered a little bit, but he's still a dominant receiver. Carson Palmer, again, and Cam Newton, both excellent quarterbacks. And then, of course, Odell Beckham. But I think that little incident with Josh Norman and his attitude in general probably won't get him the award.
Probably.
And then, Defensive Player of the Year, you have J.J. Watt, of course, 17.5 sacks. Khalil Mack in Oakland with 15 sacks. He's an absolute stud. And then you have Ezekiel Ansah in Detroit, 13.5 sacks. He did it without Ndamukong Suh and Nick Fairley this year. And then you have Reggie Nelson with 8 interceptions, safety for the Cincinnati Bengals, and then Luke Kuechly with Carolina. If I had to pick somebody, I probably would go with Khalil Mack because I think he he's like J.J. Watt's always great.
He's always in the discussion.
But Khalil Mack has become a whole new animal this year.
Right.
And he's the anchor of that defense. I think he'll do fine. And then, offensive rookie of the year. This is where it kind of gets tricky,
Yeah.
You have Amari Cooper, Todd Gurley, Marcus Mariota, and Jameis Winston. If I had to pick somebody, I'm going to go with Jameis Winston. I mean,
Really?
4,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, completed almost 60% of his passes for a rookie quarterback, moved the Bucs offense really, really well. He did have two outstanding stud wide receivers in Vincent Jackson and Mike Evans, but the way he transformed, the way he brought leadership, and he was an outstanding quarterback this year. I like Todd Gurley, but there was a period where he wasn't cracking 100 yards for like 5 games.
And Cooper started out very strong. And he had a good season, really good season.
Oh, he was outstanding. Marcus Mariota had a great year, but he got hurt. So,
and the situation there just kind of worked against him. Before he got hurt, things were going bad with the coaching staff and the system and all of that. Now,
defensive rookie of the year, there's not many. I mean, there's Leonard Williams. He isn't up for it, but I think the consensus runaway is going to be Marcus Peters with Kansas City. 8 interceptions this year. He's been a ball hawk in that secondary. Gives them, because Marcus Peters, he got kicked off the team at Washington when he was in college, and it hurt his draft stock. And so the Chiefs took a bit of a flyer on him, and he's been nothing short of outstanding this year. I mean, really has, solidified that secondary. Because, they used to have remember when they had Brandon Flowers and Sean Smith?
Yeah.
I mean, Sean Smith is still there, and, that they had a decent secondary, but they sort of fell off a little bit. But I think getting Marcus Peters there, that makes quarterbacks hold the ball just a little longer against those 2 outstanding pass rushers in Justin Houston and Tom Bahali. And then you got D Ford in there. So, I mean, consensus runaway pick for me is Marcus Peters.
Sounds good.
And, and then comeback player of the year.
I think, and there's one on here that I'd like to throw into the list as well. Eric Berry.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You have to think that he's going to get some votes there. But Peterson, great season. They won the division after he had that
the domestic abuse scandal and all.
Sam Bradford, I don't know. I don't know that he's.
I don't know either. I mean, they talked about him being up for it, but I don't think he's quite there. I think Kirk Cousins though should be in the discussion because of the year he had last year, where that was absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And to come this year and do it has been outstanding. But I think, like you said, I think the consensus pick is probably going to be Eric Berry.
Yeah.
Because, coming back from leukemia and all that.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if it was Hodgkin. It was coming back from cancer. So.
It was Hodgkin lymphoma.
Yeah, that's right. And then coach of the year,
This is a tough one.
It's a really tough one.
Because, you would think Ron Rivera, they were undefeated down through the stretch, but... God, the job Andy Reid's done out there.
Oh my God, 1-5 to start out, and now they're 11-5 and in the playoffs, and they're probably going to go far.
Yeah.
Bruce Arians obviously is always up there. Bill Belichick, I think dealing with the injuries. Todd Bowles with the Jets. And nobody talks about Jay Gruden, but worst to first, and.
Yeah. I don't think he's in the discussion with Ron Rivera and Andy Reid, but it's an amazing turnaround. That he's put together here, so definitely maybe next year when they go 14 and 2, then he can be coach.
Yeah, and then but I think you're right about Ron Rivera and Andy Reid. So I mean it's gonna be a tight race for that one. But now we're into the section of the show that you all been waiting for, Dick's Picks for the NFL playoff games this week. On Saturday, we have the Steelers at the Bengals and the Chiefs at the Texans.
The whole AFC on Saturday there.
Mm-hmm. I like Pittsburgh against Cincinnati because I don't trust A.J. McCarron.
Yeah, I really want to see. I like Marvin Lewis a lot. I really want to see the Bengals get a playoff win, and I just don't. I don't think.
I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Cincinnati won because they have an excellent, talented football team.
And Pittsburgh is, they're coming in without Williams.
Mm-hmm.
So and
they have no running game to speak of.
Right. So when you can just straight up key on getting to Roethlisberger and
they have good pass rushers too with Geno Atkins and Dominic Pecco and and all those guys. They have ball hawking safeties. It's going to be a close game, but
Yeah.
I think that Pittsburgh will probably come on top.
That's who I picked as well.
And then Kansas City at Houston. I like Kansas City.
Yeah, that's not even. It's not.
It will
even
be a
question.
physical, close ball game though, because Houston has an outstanding defense.
Yeah.
But I don't trust Brian Hoyer because you saw early in the year, Week 1, had 2 turnovers on the first 2 drives, and they pulled him for Ryan Mount, who's now in Baltimore right now. So, but Hoyer's picked his game up a little bit, but. I like Kansas City. I think they're a better team. I think they'll come out on top.
It's like you just said. They rolled off 11 straight,
Yeah.
and they're gonna keep rolling. They're gonna go a little deeper, and they could. They're one of those wild card teams that you could see making the deep run, especially with the problems that Denver's having.
New England, being banged up.
God, their line is horrible. They're getting killed right now.
Imagine what could happen if they faced Justin Houston, who's coming back, and Dee Ford and Tom Holly. I would not want to be Tom Brady that game.
And I just want to throw this out there. Imagine if Andy Reid out there in KC just running all the way through the way they have. Can you just imagine what those Eagles fans are going to? They're going to be just jumping off into the river over
there. They'll be calling for
it,
Jeffrey Lurie.
To go from what they had with Chip Kelly. And Andy Reid's out there just killing it in Kansas City.
God. So, and then, Sunday we have the first game, Seahawks at Minnesota. I like Seattle this game.
I do too.
They did beat Minnesota 38-7 in the game of the regular season, but Minnesota was without their stud linebacker, Anthony Barr, their stud safety, Harrison Smith, and their stud D-tackle, Linval Joseph. Now, they're all expected to be back. Adrian Peterson will probably get the majority of the carries because that was the game, when he kind of got mad at Zimmer and said they were out-coached.
But he's hurt right now. Doesn't he have an issue with his back at the moment? I saw something today that Peterson will play, but he's nursing a back issue. So
he'll be geeked up to play that game.
Yeah.
And I think it will be closer because I think that Minnesota. Marshawn Lynch is coming back, but we don't know how healthy he's going to be. Remember Rawls, their stud running back they had that filled in for Lynch. He's out for the year.
But, Christine Michael came back and stepped right in.
Yeah.
God, what they did to the Cardinals last week was insane.
My thing is it's going to be a physical ball game. Like I think that, Greg Robinson, and Eric Kendricks and those guys are going to come off the edge. They're going to want it's going to be a physical ball game, but I think at the end of the day, I don't trust Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, he's
14 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Those aren't big numbers, And I think Russell Wilson just on such a hot streak right now. I think that they'll probably win in that game.
I think Seattle's in a position because they get the winner of this game goes to Arizona, I believe.
It depends. If Seattle win, if the Redskins were to win and Seattle were to win, Seattle would go to Carolina. We would go to Arizona.
Okay.
If Minnesota wins, Minnesota would go to Arizona.
Gotcha.
And if we won, we would go to Carolina. So,
but after what Seattle did to Arizona last week, whatever team is sitting on bye and has Seattle coming in has to be quite a bit nervous. No, it is going to be. I saw today. It's going to be 0 degrees in Minnesota, and they're playing outside
with a wind chill of -10. My goodness,
that'll be a fun one to watch. And then the last one, the Green Bay Packers coming to Washington to Landover.
I like the Redskins this game. The game could be close. You never count against Aaron Rodgers, but Green Bay has been outscored 50-10 in their last couple games, and the Redskins have been outscoring their opponents in the last 3 games. I think 105 to 50. That could be, and Green Bay's offensive line is banged up.
Yeah, they're giving up a lot of sacks, and if you're going to let Kerrigan and Smith run, it could be a really fun game to watch if that's happening. If they're getting free passes at Rodgers, that's going to be fun.
And if I'm Jay Gruden, I do some quick passes because Clay Matthews and and Julius Peppers are really good players. They got Mike Neal, and Mike Daniels. They have some really good players on defense, but I just don't think they're good enough to stop a high-powered offense.
You have to be able to run against the Packers. You have to keep those linebackers home, keep them occupied on the running backs, and then Kirk Cousins is the best play-action quarterback right now in the league. So if you can get some running game going, that's going to open up that deep bomb to Deshaun and to Garcon and in the middle over there.
And you got Jamison Crowder, and Jordan Reed. I just think there's too much weaponry for Green Bay to defend. And, when Aaron Rodgers plays well, I think he'll probably throw a couple touchdowns, but my thing about him is, will his receivers catch passes, or will they drop them, or will we intercept passes? I don't think it's a good matchup for the Packers, and I like the Redskins that game.
I do too.
Okay, we've come to the conclusion of our show. If you'd like to be a guest analyst on the show, please email executivedirector.fgs@gmail.com and put guest analyst for DMV NFL Show on it. Dan, thanks very much for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
All right, take care, everybody.
Go Skins.